former First Lady Michelle Obama making an appearance on the popular Call Her Daddy podcast. Obama was promoting her new book, which is called The Look, which is partially a memoir and partially a reflection on the role that her fashion choices played in her time at the White House.
Obama says she never wanted people to only think of her as being Barack Obama's wife, feeling that it overshadowed her past accomplishments. Take a look.
But I was like, well, I went to Princeton and Harvard. I mean, I practiced law. I was an assistant to the mayor in Chicago. I ran a nonprofit, a 501c3. I built a board.
Doing this.
I was a vice president for community relations at the University of Chicago hospitals. I was a dean of students. I was like, oh, you guys, all of that just disappeared in the course of this whole election. And you now see me as just Barack Obama's wife. So that made me say, what, that quickly, my shoes become the most important thing about me.
The conversation circled back to comments the former First Lady made a couple of months ago where she said the U.S. is not ready for a woman to be president. Here she was clarifying those remarks.
There are men out there that were not going to vote for a woman. You know, people have had those conversations, right? Let's just be real about it and let's put that on the table and talk about, well, what's that about? Let's not be mad because I made the statement. Let's look at the fact that we've had two really qualified female candidates. One who was First Lady, Secretary of State, well-educated, you know. My husband beat her, right? People were more comfortable with him as a newcomer, right? And now we just had the former vice president.
Finally, the host of the show, Alex Cooper, brought up the possibility of President Trump attempting to, quote, change the rules and run for a third term. She asked if Barack Obama would consider doing the same thing if the rules were really changed. But Michelle quickly dismissed that idea, saying she would actively work against that.
This is a hard job. And it requires new energy, new vision all the time, new ways of looking at the world, right? So I do believe that 8 years is enough. Like, you know, so, and there's so many talented people out there. Like, why would we keep going with the same people?
I enjoyed this interview. A lot to unpack here. I think that when you sit down and have a long amount of time with somebody, I'll start with one of the first things she said about diminishing all her qualifications. Like, I had read her memoir about how she'd been successful in her career, and Barack was almost like the person who, like, you know, aspired to be like Michelle, the working lawyer at the same, I believe they worked at the same law firm. And she's like, why are you guys like forgetting a lot of that? And that happens a lot if somebody gets with somebody high profile, like their whole career kind of goes out the window. Vice versa. I've seen it for men too. I'll bring this up with Colin, like a sports athlete starts dating like a celebrity that I know, like Taylor Swift, for example, and he becomes Taylor Swift's boyfriend. And I don't know anything about the sport. So, and he's like, I'm accomplished in my own right. So I totally understand that. I think it was a good conversation. I also think when she talked about the woman, I actually had Erica Lowe, who was a former director for Biden, on our podcast, World of Travel podcast yesterday. And she said the same thing. She thought that people would have been more comfortable voting for Biden, even in the condition that everybody was accusing him of being in, because he was a guy. And so there's just some of that people agree with. I also know that I've had the privilege of being a reporter around the globe around the country, from Arizona to Los Angeles to Denver, Colorado, you know, a lot of purple, red, and blue states. And I remember when Hillary was running and we would do interviews with people, one guy told me one time, well, if she's going to stay with a guy that cheats on her, like, I don't want her to be my president. And I thought that was so absurd, to say that the person that got cheated on is the reason why you wouldn't vote for him for president. I know that's one opinion and a silly opinion amongst millions, but it just goes to show you that it's just a fact. There's probably people out here that are not voting for somebody because of the way they look or are or their gender.
I understand her frustration that her credentials weren't elevated much, but the reality is when your husband's president, like, it's going to happen. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a silly complaint just because he's literally the leader of the free world. Like, I'm sorry, we're not going to talk about you being dean of students. Like, you know, no disrespect, but we are trying to evaluate your husband's presidency and your role in that. And so I think that complaint was a little silly. I wanted to get your take, though, on something else she said in the podcast. We didn't play the clip from it, but she was talking about what advice she gives to young women who have careers and children. And she basically said, don't bother putting your career to the side while you're raising children because they'll just grow up and leave you and be ungrateful. I was like, that's really harsh.
She talks about her kids in a funny way. Obviously she loves them, but it's very like, it seems like a tough love situation. Like she told them like, you're not. And I have friends like this that are like telling, like, for example, they'll tell their little sibling to get out of their room and their mom will be like, okay, none of these are nobody's rooms besides mine because I own the house, right? That's just a different way of parenting.
Sounds like my dad.
Yeah, and it's just like, so I think she's very much that person. She wants her kids to try to figure out humility and being humble in the midst of, like you said, your dad has the biggest job in the world, so you'll never not be famous. And you've seen other, specifically presidents' children go through this, like Jenna Bush talks about her experience because now she hosts the Today Show, about how she tried to like fight and claw to find her identity. You'll see this with Hillary Clinton's kid and Bill Clinton's daughter. You know, she talks about this a lot as she public speaks. I think it's hard to find your identity. And so part of Michelle protecting her probably as adamantly as Michelle's mom, which was the kid's grandmother, protected Michelle while she was in the White House and living with them. I think that probably passed down in just like a generational thing where she's like, I just want to try to give my kids the most amount of normalcy. So I'm not going to try to make them feel like celebrities in any way. I'm going to still work and show them what hard works look like so they can emulate this when they realize that everything doesn't just get handed to you on the platter because your parents were famous, and that could deter them into, you know, being like mediocre. I know I think Sasha wants to get into film producing. You don't want to be a mediocre film producer. You might as well knock it out the park. You're Obama's kid. So yes, you have the access, but like now go really do something creative. You got to work hard at that.
The other interesting part of the interview was when the host, Alex Cooper, was asking Michelle Obama basically about clothing and how women are perceived. And she said, you know, if I'm going in for a job interview and I think wearing like a slinky dress will have the interviewer like me because I'm a woman, but maybe I want to wear the suit because I want to be perceived as more professional. Like, what should I do? And Michelle basically said, if you need to pay your bills, then wear whatever you think is going to get you the job. It's kind of funny. But I think sometimes there's these conversations about like politicization of women's fashion and what have you.
Yeah.
And I understand that for men it is easier because they have a smaller range of options.
Robbie told me he has 4 suits in rotation.
Which I get it. But I do think, you know, how you present yourself and the way that you dress and you know, the way that you style your hair or whether or not your nails are done does convey a signal to people of how much you care about something, the way that you are trying to behave in a certain situation. Like, I do think that appearance matters. And to kind of chalk that up to politicization, like you wouldn't wear, you know, pajamas to a wedding, right? You try to convey a certain level of respect depending on the situation that you're in. And so I think sometimes that conversation gets reduced to, well, women are being unfairly judged because they wore this and that and whatever. But I do think, you know, the way that you present yourself has value.
Sure, and I agree with that. I think that you have to come in looking the part, and part of that speaks volumes before you even open your mouth. And so I was always taught that, and I completely agree with you. But I think where it starts to go left and why it's frustrating for women is because when you are completely professional in the way that you feel and that you showed up full suit, but somebody thinks your hair is unprofessional, which is why we're arguing about the Crown Act right now. Or somebody thinks, well, then we get into this nuance of like what someone else's gaze thinks is professional. And if you are wholly by most standards looking as professional as you need to be and being judged by the shoes you came in with, that's got to be frustrating for somebody who is credentialed and prepared for the opportunity or the hairstyle that you have. It's like, what is professional maybe needs some expanding because people are more creative these days. We have a slew of professionals that are online making more than probably you and I that are completely professional, right? I mean, I don't know. I might make a lot of money, but they do too in one deal. And it's just like, well, they're considered professional too. They obviously are business people hopefully collecting and paying their taxes and everything. So we have to just expand our definition of professional and not be clutching our pearls so much.
Do you think Michelle still wants to run for president or is thinking about it?
Still, I think she never did.
Yeah, well, she said that. I don't know if I buy it.
I don't think. I think that
did?
She's so over it. You know, I went to her book tour when she first put out her first book after the presidency, after Barack was president a second time. And I was at Barclays Center, and you could feel the way that she was frustrated about having to, the whole go high thing and just like have decorum in the office. She really was constantly being attacked and ridiculed like any public figure is, and some praise as well. But she was just like, I'm done. I really felt the sigh of relief of like, I don't have to, be stand-up person because my husband is trying to accomplish something. And sometimes you do that, when you're married or with a life partner, like you just do stuff for them. Like they have this big job, you got to like help them have success in it. And she was like, okay, we're done. And so I hope he stays out of politics. It's like she doesn't want him to run a third term. And I'm certainly not getting into it. So I believe her because of that feeling and expression she had at that Barclays Center.
Yeah, I would want to be far away from it too. Yeah, I don't blame her. All right, we have a lot more to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.